Games Workshop should lose the exclusive rights to the Warhammer setting. Currently, we have a hobby where new hobbyists are groomed into staying in a Games Workshop exclusive ecosystem, instead of spreading their wings and flying into the variety of mini wargaming possibilities. And because Games Workshop own everything Warhammer, their captive audience are stuck buying Warhammer miniatures at absurd markup prices. There's simply no competition at all. Games Workshop losing their IP would fix this immediately. And it would be the best possible thing to happen to the miniature wargaming hobby if you are a Warhammer fan. And I know that it sounds absolutely crazy to a lot of people that a company should be forced to share their ideas, but stick with me here. See, I approach everything from the perspective of, is it best for hobbyists? Is it best for consumers? And I can't help but notice that ever since the Chapter House trial, this was a court case where Games Workshop accidentally got a judge to look into their trademarks, whoops. And the result was that the term Space Marine was ruled to be so generic that I can legally name my Patreon tiers after them. Seriously, go check it out. It's patreon.com/discoursminiatures. And this hasn't really harmed the game of Warhammer. Games Workshop might have panicked and renamed everything, sure. But as a core concept, Warhammer wasn't really hurt. But I tell you what, we've certainly seen an explosion of Space Marine STLs and alternative prints of Space Marine models now, the likes of which you might not have seen 10, 15 years ago. There's so much more variety now. This is good for hobbyists. Us having more choice is good. Other designers being able to design what they want is great. See, frankly, I'm a mercenary. I have no loyalty to Games Workshop. If someone makes a better game or designs better miniatures, baby, I'm there. So I want Games Workshop to compete on those terms. I want them to have to make better games, better miniatures. I don't want them to simply rely on the fact that no one can create alternatives to their games. And whenever I bring up this point about copyright and trademarks, I often get comments of, how would you feel, Discourse, if someone were to profit off your videos, off your content? How would you like it, Discourse? Well, my response is, good luck to them, whoever they are, because they can't do what I do. I mean, I didn't copyright talking about Warhammer. However, no one else can be me. I'm me. You just can't steal me. I'm the best me I can be. Well, no, I've got a lot of work to do. I suppose that Clayface could probably be me. He could probably do a good me. I think there would be a loss of panache there. There could be a changeling situation, I guess. But I'm actually not threatened by the idea that someone would emulate what I do here on this channel. Because if they do, that's fine. I can do it better than them, probably. I mean, if they were really good, I'd probably be a little bit worried, yeah. But I could hardly complain. So much of this channel was inspired by those who came before me, by other creators. I mean, I'm basically just the modern version of this guy. Who am I to say that someone else shouldn't be allowed to use this format? Or I don't know, potentially ADHD-induced inability to get through complete sentences without being sidetracked halfway through. Because seriously, I do that a lot. Look, there it was again, I got me. But regardless, the entire purpose, the entire goal of copyright and trademarks is to protect creators. Mostly because of how sucky it feels to see someone else steal your idea and make a profit off it. It's not fun to get ripped off. Nobody likes that. And it's not fair either. But in practice, copyrights don't really achieve that. Because most of the time, creators don't get ripped off by imitators. They don't watch money that rightfully belongs to them go to people like Arthur Slugsworth. No, it's usually the major corporations that they often work for that steals their ideas. Willy Wonka didn't come up with all those chocolate ideas. It was a goddamn Oompa Loompa. So if you'd want to play as an Oompa Loompa rebelling against your cruel taskmaster, Willy Wonka, why not check out today's sponsor, Brutality? There's a lot of miniature agnostic wargames out there, but Brutality, the skirmish wargame, is properly miniatures agnostic. It's a warband skirmish level game where you can pit your Necromunda gangers against Vampire Napoleon and his army of ghouls. You can have Batman going up against a Space Marine. It's a fun game if you have a diaspora of minis or even a 3D printer. There's even rules for solo play, so there's really no excuse not to try it. I would heartily recommend it. There is a link in the description of this video where you can download the basic rules for free. You owe it to yourself to check it out. And okay, for maybe a less whimsical example than Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, let's get a little bit more real. So Jerry Siegel, he is the joint creator of Superman. He and Joe Shuster, the man who drew the first Superman image, sold the original design of Superman to DC Comics for $130 in 1938. Because they were in a pretty bad spot. When the character proved to be an immediate success, Siegel and Shuster brought DC Comics to court. They wanted a cut of the profits. It was, after all, their idea. Their gambit failed. DC owned it. The courts stood behind the company. And for the rest of their lives, Siegel and Shuster lived on the poverty line, while DC made billions. In 1975, Jerry Siegel said that he could no longer stand to look at Superman comic books. He claimed that it made him physically ill, and he died penniless. The creator of Superman, one of the biggest properties in modern culture. So remember that the next time someone talks about the ethics of piracy, my discourses. And in the Warhammer world, we only need to look at initiatives like the Black Library. At any moment, Games Workshop could tell Dan Abnett to f*** off. And that's it. It's over. He can't do anything about that. All the creativity, all the work, all the effort that went into his novels, gone. Everything he created in those books, they don't belong to him. They belong to a corporation, Games Workshop. They own Warhammer, and what is emblazoned at the top of every single Black Library novel? Warhammer! The corporate brand! The intellectual property that belongs to no person but to a machine. And that's what Games Workshop is. It is a machine. Corporations aren't people. They're made up of collections of individuals, but they have to work within certain constraints, to certain objectives. Would anyone truly be concerned if a machine lost these rights? Oh, and never mind Black Library. Good luck to those who contribute towards things like codices, the artwork, and all the ancillary Games Workshop products. At least Dan Abnett gets his name on the book. They don't even get recognized. They don't even get their names on the credits. So frightened are Games Workshop of allowing even one individual to have some form of acclaim at their expense. They would prefer that most don't even know what sort of contributions individual team members make to their games, because they are terrified that someone, an individual, could make some claim of ownership over anything involved in Warhammer. Games Workshop do not like to share. They'd best be careful though, that's the sort of attitude that got us a Riddler.
Competitron Software's success didn't come from the product, Nigma. Competitron is the corporate attitude. Its strength is in the boardroom, the deal, the contract. Specifically, the work-for-hire contract you signed.
And so I have a modest proposal. We eat the children of the Irish. Wait, no, not that. I think I've got another one here. Why not open this stuff to the public domain? What would the harm be? For some reason, the idea that an IP should become part of the public domain is controversial now. But it wasn't always. Legislators originally understood the need for IP to become part of the public discourse, something that the world could change and play with. That's why the original Copyright Act of 1790 allowed 14 years of copyright protection. 14 years! And an additional 14 years if the original creator was still alive. So that gave a maximum protection of 38 years. Then, public domain. Copyright was designed for a specific purpose, to allow the original artist to enjoy the fruits of their labor to a proportional extent. When originally envisioned, copyright was not intended to be extended indefinitely by the courts. There was no expectation that companies like Disney would lobby and pay legislators for extensions on their IP holdings long after the deaths of the original creator. Now, Disney basically owns culture, and the courts actively support that. That sort of sucks. And as far as I can see, in the miniature wargaming space, if the Warhammer IP was made available to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, Games Workshop would finally get some real competition right where they live. A novel occurrence that would maybe force Games Workshop to engage in some real competitive behavior. They would have to care about building good games, good miniatures, good goddamn paint pots. I want better paint pots. My Citadel paint pots keep crusting over or spilling. And I want to use contrast paints, damn it. Release the contrast paint formula. Rick Priestley left Games Workshop in the 2000s because they wouldn't allow him to make changes to the core gameplay of Warhammer 40k. One of the original creators of Warhammer 40k wanted to innovate on the game, perhaps to create a better system, to build upon what came before. Maybe innovate, get rid of that really annoying you go I go system. And Games Workshop wouldn't let it. Maybe if they didn't get a say, we'd have a better game of Warhammer 40k today. Maybe if Games Workshop didn't have the exclusive right to Warhammer, there'd be a better one that we could play right now. Well, there is, and it's called Gates of Antares, and the core gameplay is a lot of fun, but the IP sucks. I'm sorry, Warlord, it is the most boring thing I've ever seen in my entire life. You have one interesting faction. But imagine if Gates of Antares could have Space Marines and Orcs, and it could have been called Warhammer. Boy, that would really get Games Workshop working to try to create a better game, wouldn't it? It would be the only way they could compete, right? I think that this would make them a better company, a more optimal machine. They'd have to be more responsible to their consumers. They'd have to be more responsive to their customers, not simply acquire them passively because they own a compelling setting. Games Workshop need the competition, desperately. Otherwise, we get things like Warhammer 40k 9th edition. And let me tell you, I'm not looking forward to 10th. And you know, maybe those Primarchs would be a little bit cheaper if other companies could legally make sculpts of Sanguinius. And if you're interested, I did a video on what Warhammer could look like if Games Workshop disappeared overnight. So check that out here. And as always, a huge thanks to my patrons, especially my Space Marine captains, Steven Jackson and Earthwormia. Thank you so much. And I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye! Games Workshop, the land to ask. By the way, the Frasier thing, not an April Fool's joke. This was just on the backlog.